Okay, good morning. Matt and Bra, welcome as well. Um, we are excited for today's webinar, Status Intelligence. We have Jim Schrader, founder and CEO of IMS, here with us today, and then also his senior support engineer, Bill Deary, and then also his director of development, Scott Lanier. And I'm sorry, Scott, I know that I pronounced that wrong, so you're going to have to forgive me on that. Apologies. Um, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to them. They have a really cool tool here that we expect everybody that sees it is going to see the value in it. And then we are excited to share it with you guys. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them during the call. And then we'll also have some question and answer time at the end as well. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it off to Jim.
Okay, well, good morning. You guys can all see my screen, I hope. Oh, wait a minute. No, I shared the wrong screen. Sorry about that. Let's try one more time. Okay, so you guys can see me, I
We can
hope.
see you.
Okay, awesome. Well, a few words of thanks. Thank you for Paula and the whole Big Hairy Dog family. So we appreciate you putting this session together. Thank you to all of the retailers for your attendance today. We're hoping to make it worth your while, giving you some information that might improve the efficiency, effectiveness, and hopefully the overall profitability of your businesses. Um, so what are we going to cover today? Um, we're going to, talk about an offering that Paula mentioned called Status Intelligence, which is a business intelligence and reporting tool for Retail Pro and other systems. To kind of set the stage, I'm going to talk a little bit about some past and current challenges in the retail industry, and then kind of maybe parallel that with Retail Pro International, the manufacturers of Retail Pro. So we'll talk about what we built and why. Um, I'm going to turn it over to Bill, to demonstrate the current product, talk about, a couple of unique things that people are doing with it. And then we'll turn it over to Scott. There's a couple of very new features that, one that is now available, one that will be available very, very shortly. And then we'll end it up with some Q&A and discussions. Um, so the one thing that I will say is I've got one ground rule, and that is there are no dumb questions. You guys get to decide if there's any dumb answers, but I would say please ask the questions, whether, and I already saw one in the Microsoft Teams chat, so do it that way, or you can just speak up and say, hey, can we get a question on that? Because again, I would prefer a dialogue instead of a monologue. So just to kind of talk about this first bullet, that my background right out of college, I got hired at IBM, and I dealt a lot with retail. And point of sale was out there, but it just wasn't mainstream at the time. And IBM was the first to market with this relational database product. And so they come to all of the industry people and say, hey, we think this is going to impact retail. And so I go out and start talking to a lot of the retailers, and there was that always created a big argument. No, 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 you don't understand. The whole buying merchandising function is an art. It's not a science. So no database is going to help it because it's an art. So, and I would say that, probably 90+% of retailers back then started doing that. Well, now, as the databases got bigger and the tools to, get data and all of that happened, things have started to change. And now, especially with products that we're going to show you, BI or business intelligence, and now some people are starting to ask us, hey, could you put AI into that, artificial intelligence? And so things will change. Is it ever going to go to 100% science? Probably not in my lifetime, but it's definitely closer than it was when I started in this industry. Now, Retail Pro at the same time, we started back in version 5, so I don't know if there's any other veterans out there like us that, we started a long time ago, and we were amazed that, as we looked at big retailers, they had a couple of features, um, um, profile statistics and SRO, and a lot of big companies at the time were struggling with that. So Retail Pro, guess what? Now as time has gone on, version 9, Prism 1 and Prism 2 all have relational databases. They've toyed with the whole UI UX, the user interface, it's now, web-based in that. And but again, we've been frustrated that a lot of those functions that we had 30 years ago, we still don't have in Prism 2, right? So that's why we built what we built. So, let me jump in. And what this session is not going to be, it's not going to be, spend a long time on talking about decision-making process, but most retailers, and again, I've been a business owner for a long time, and the more that we put together processes for everything, the more orderly our businesses are going to run. So, one of the biggest things is this should be a never-ending cycle in terms of what you do in terms of figuring out what products are going to be on your shelves. And obviously each year the products change, the vendors change, the competition changes, whatever. And we still get told 30 years after becoming a Retail Pro dealer that the retailers are just saying, yeah, it's just difficult to get gathered, because Retail Pro has a tremendous amount of data in it. And how do we make it meaningful so that we can take action? So the action that they take is a lot of times it's, what did I do last month? What did I do last season, last year, whatever? And let's just order the same thing. And obviously when that happens, it's a guess. It might be an educated guess, but when you guess, sometimes you're right and many times you're wrong. And that's where financially you get hurt, right? So the one other kind of setting things up is that, people talk about reporting and analytics. And I have to put this chart in here for Scott because he doesn't like me calling status intelligence reporting. But again, those two terms are used as interchangeable. When I say analytics, I'm talking about BI or business intelligence, and they are interchangeable for many people, but they're very different. And reporting just gathers the data and presents it in a structured way, really answers what happened. Whereas analytics, the real focus is helping you identify patterns, gaining insights, and how to make this future decisions, right? Over what has happened in the past, what is happening now, what might happen in the future. So again, you can't have BI without reporting, but they're really different. And BI is a much more complex product or process. And again, just to kind of put it to bed, is reporting is really for observation, BI is for action. And so we'll talk about action. And just to give an analogy, it's like, think of it in the medical field, the nurse is the reporting function, doctors the analytics. And why do I say that? The nurse takes the vital signs, records the symptoms, and reports all that to the doctor, who then what? Uses that info to diagnose the patient, develop a treatment plan, what to do next, right? So usually when I have one-on-one, it's like, okay, who do you have on staff? Nurses, doctors, or both? And again, we could argue the thing about art versus science, but you really can't argue the fact that inventory is so critical. So I could have two retailers, same number of stores, maybe the same SKUs, very similar top line sales, but the one that manages the inventory the best is the most profitable. There's some small exceptions to that, but not having the right mix of inventory is critical, as you know. And since that's your largest asset, people just keep saying, yeah, there's more and more data, and how do I quickly get at it? Because too much or too little leads to lost sales, lost customers, lost profitability. And really think about some of the things that your labor is doing manually, and that's now increasing costs at the same time. So that's what they're saying. Give it to me, quickly, efficiently, with some statistics. And as I started thinking about, this type of presentation, it's kind of like for every item that you have in every one of your stores. And I came up and, sorry, I just did something. Okay, sorry about that. So here's just 10 things that you can do with every item in every location. So I can do markdowns, planned or unplanned. I can put it on, I can return it to the vendor, cancel the order, request additional, or leave it alone, and others, right? And but hopefully, we would agree that this is, the bread and butter of retail, and really every single one of these decisions make have a direct impact to your bottom line. And a lot of retailers were telling me post-pandemic that yeah, they shut us all down, but yeah, Walmart and Amazon were still open, and so it's tougher and tougher, and so it's give me efficiency, effectiveness while dealing with all of the information overload. So that's what we built. And again, I will try to keep this non-technical. But first and foremost, Status Intelligence is a SaaS product. What's that? Software as a service. So I'll talk about the base service later on. I'll come back about talk about a second service that we've added. But again, built by EOS for you, and I'll talk about some of the KPIs that we have out of the box. Continuous data. If you're real time to your stores, you're near real time with all of this decision making data. If you poll every 15 or 30 minutes, you'll be 15 or 30 minutes off. Where most retailers start clapping is that this type of thing, because again, if you're on V9, Prism 1 or Prism 2, any report that you need, either you're going to have to hire people with SQL knowledge to build the reports, or you pay Big Hairy Dog or others to build those reports. So it's really geared towards a business user rather than an IT user. And I don't mean to take shots at IT people, because I guess at my core, that's what I am. So the other is ease of use. You'll see the things that most people will talk about. Like I talk to people that, hey, I love my 800, 900 page reports. And, again, that's one of those that, no, buying's an art, right? But you'll see that, we call it traffic light dashboards. I've heard Bill call it an early warning system. So imagine on any column, so it could be, margin, that you can define that, hey, anything above 50% is green. Anything between, 42 and 50 is yellow. Anything below 41 is red. So now you don't even have to look at all of the green. It's probably 80% of the report. So deal with the exceptions, the yellow and the green. We've been selling Retail Pro, as I said, for a little bit more than 31 years, 31 and a half, whatever it's been. And, our third customer was a 50 store chain. So they're like, hey, this is great. Here's, and most versions had, hey, here's a sales summary by store. And, oh, that's great. Store 1, here's the total. Store 2, the total. Store 3, the total. And then a grand total at the bottom. And they're like, no. All I want to do is add a new column and then do what percentage of store 1 of the grand total, store 2 of the grand total. And we couldn't do that. But those are functions that are very easy to do. The other unique thing is that I can be anywhere in the world that has internet. So it can be done on any system. So it could be Windows, it could be Android, it could be Android, Apple, it could even be Linux for that matter. With drill down and roll up. The other thing that people start talking a lot about is a lot of the data that's in Retail Pro. That's the only thing that I can put on a report. But retailers will tell us that we've got external data sources, and it could be a spreadsheet that has my targets for the year. It could be a full open to buy. It could be a traffic counting system. Things like that. But there's ways that we can easily pull that additional data in and then be able to see data cross system. And then similar to Retail Pro, ours is a cloud-based offering. So all of the things on our cloud are multi-language. So that fits, well with Retail Pro. So I mentioned these KPI, or key performance indicators, and I mentioned that there were 5 back 30 plus years ago. Inventory turnover rates, GMROI, or gross margin return on investment, stock to sales ratios, sell-through percentages, days of supply. And I'm just telling you, this is, when anytime I would demo the system, that's what I'd start with. And then training, everything leads to that because that's why you buy a system like this to be able to get information and pivot to wherever you need to go. And then SRO was the other one that would allow, but and anybody that's been around, there was limitations back in those days. You could only look at things at a full DCS level, at a vendor level, and a full style. So if you wanted to say, no, I want to drill down and look at classes or subclasses, you can't do that. If I looked at styles, but I want to know drill down to the color or to the size, to that specific item. So we do any and all of everything that we do. We have all of that data. So lots of data. But again, we're going to, push you towards how do you make action based on that. And anybody that's been around Retail Pro probably knows this guy. Dan Jablons is a former, he worked for a couple different Retail Pro partners. He left many years ago, and now he just does retail consulting. And here's a quote he gave going up on 3 years ago that he said, Status Intelligence is 10,000% better than Crunch or Flex Query and light years ahead because he does consulting with people outside of Retail Pro. But so before I'm going to turn this over for the demo, is there any questions from anybody? Okay, and we'll have time at the end for more of those, so don't be bashful. And I'm going to now turn it over to Bill, who's going to show you the product, and then Bill, so while you're doing that, and then we'll turn it over to Scott, and then he's going to talk about some product updates in a new module called Targets. So take it away, Bill.
All right. Thank you, Jim, and thank you guys for joining us today. I think what you're going to see is going to be impressive. For me, just a little history before I get started. I've been around in Retail Pro just as long as Jim, started with 5 Series. I've seen all the reporting engines out there in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and now Prism with Crunch. This, in my mind, is by far the best tool that I've seen to gather data and analyze it and use it for your business. If you can see my screen, I hope so. If you can't, please let me know. And you can see just starting out, as Jim said, I'm on a web page. So this is available to you anywhere in the world on any device that you have that has internet access. And you can see, looking at the screen, I've got a mobile dashboard. I'll get into that a little bit later. But as I'm going through this, what I want you to think about is the amount of visualizations, and that's what we call them here in this tool, that you're going to see that come to you out of the box. If you had to run that many reports, and Scott likes me to use the word visualization instead of reports because it's a different tool. And you can see here that I've got multiple dashboards on this page. I have one for analysts. I have one for buyers. Now, when I talk about buyers, let me just jump in here quick, right? As soon as I jump in to this dashboard, you're going to see data populating, and this is real time connected to your Retail Pro 9 database and or your Prism database. And you can see just by coming in here, if I scroll down, the amount of data that is instantly populated. If you think about having to go back and run the amount of reports that this tool gives you, it's incredible the amount of stuff that we get. But let me just keep it here for a little bit. I'll go through each one of those individualized dashboards. And again, if you have questions while I'm going through this, please drop them in the chat. Scott will address those. As you can see, I've got things like active purchase order stats. And when I'm in here, if I want to pop this out, I just hit this little arrow in the top right-hand corner. And it's going to pop out. And now I'm working on this particular individualized visualization. If I wanted to drill down at this point, you can see I've got this greater than sign, and I can just drill right into this. And now I'm looking at PO number associated to store on my active PO order stats. I've got due, extended cost, due extended price, order quantity, receive quantity, due quantity, percent unfilled, those types of things. Now, if I wanted to go in and edit this, and I'm going to show you the ease of use here a little bit. And this is one that's just a data set, right? We have the ability to look at things in pie charts and bar graphs, all of that kind of stuff. If I go into an edit mode here, and now I'm just kind of looking, maybe I want to have PO number first, right? And you can see all my elements over here. So if I wanted PO number first, all I would have to do is just drag it, right? As opposed to writing a SQL script. And you can see that my data recalculated while I'm in here just dragging and dropping. If I wanted to add something else, I just change it back to store. I come here and I can say, you know, what else do I want to see here? And I can just drop it in there by saying, maybe I want to see description 1 on the POs. I just bring it in just like that, right? And now all of my values are down here on the bottom. And you can see, if you look at this one, and hopefully you can see it on your screen, you can see percent unfilled. I have a value that says FX. So I can add formulas to any dashboard I want, similar to Excel. So if you've got some Excel skills, that kind of thing, and I bring this up, you can see my percent unfilled is order quantity minus received quantity divided by order quantity. We put that in there, and all of this stuff is going to be available to you to drill down and do all the kinds of things you want. So now if I drill down while I'm in my edit mode, and I'm in store 1 or store 0, you can see I've got this particular PO number. And here's all my descriptive information that's on there. Now I could add ALU just by dragging it from here and bring it over here as well. And now it recalculated again. And while I'm in my edit mode, I could always just save it by clicking on this check mark right here. Okay. If I don't want to save what I've done, maybe I get in here and I get a little confused and I say, I really don't know what the changes are. I just hit this X and I'm out, right? I'm out. I'm going to collapse this. Now, I'm not going to go into a long training session here. I just want to show you the high level overview, I guess is what I would call it. And incidentally, if you want to have a one-off at some point, you can get in touch with Paula, and she'll hook us up so that we can spend a lot more time diving in. But I could create a new visualization here on this page. And if I just scroll down, you can see that I've got some bars, charts. I've got a whole lot of different ways to look at information. But you can see I've got POs, item details, voucher details, item details, SRO drill down stuff. If you're used to sold, received on order stuff, it's all in here. Suffice it to say that whatever is in your Retail Pro 9 or Prism database, we're going to be able to build dashboards and visualizations that fit how you want to analyze your data. And along with signing up with us, you're going to get some training. Interesting story. We did a big client. I don't know if I should mention who they are. Multiple locations, and when I was scheduled to do some training with them, the way that it works here is they'll get their username and link to the dashboard set that we create for them. When I finally got on the phone to train him, he said, "I love this stuff." I said, "What do you mean you love this stuff?" He said, "I've been using it for the last 2 weeks during events to fulfill my inventory at my locations while I'm having events." I'm like, "You've been using it already? I haven't even taught you how to use it." He said, "It's very, very easy." So that's a buyer's one. Imagine jumping into an inventory dashboard like this wherever you are in the world. Maybe you're at a buying show, and immediately on jumping in, you can see this is what I'm carrying at cost. This is what I have at retail. This is my average cost. This is my average price, those types of things. And that's not all we can put on this dashboard for you, but we could put a whole lot of different things based on your business process. And we've done that with many clients already. If I wanted to pop out this pie chart, I could just come in here and say, let's drill down to store 2. Now I'm looking at it by my department, right? As I'm going through here. And I've had people tell me, I don't like to look at pie charts. I just like to look at data. Okay, well, turn it into data. Right? And here's your data. when I do that, right? So if I go back and I want to go back to my pie chart, I'm right back. It's that quick and easy to do these types of things with status intelligence. Phenomenal. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my 30 years in Retail Pro. And it's, it's what people have been looking for always since I've been working with Retail Pro. Now, this is getting into what I always call the managed by exception stuff, or the early warning system I think Jim referenced earlier. If I pop this one out, you see that I have conditional formatting on this column. At first blush, it looks great, right? But if I drill down, I might have some stuff going on that I'm unaware of because I'm hitting that margin percent. And you can see that I'm looking at it that way. Let's do ascending, flip the switch and see if I could bring up some red stuff. Maybe a bad example. I don't have a whole lot of red stuff going on in this one, so we'll look at some other ones for that as I'm moving through this demo. But you can see that I've got that conditional formatting, which I can set, by the way, to any individualized department. Let's try this one. Okay, now this is a better example. You can see by looking at these vendors that I have, if I pop this one out, you can see that I need to deal with these, right? How important would this be to be on site at a vendor show and be able to pull this stuff up right in front of them on your iPad or whatever you've got with you and say, we can drill right down into some of these ALUs, the actual description, and deal with those problem items. Again, what Jim was saying, if you've got an 800 page report, you're looking through it like a needle in a haystack. In this case, we can set it up so you can look at things, immediately find out what's causing you the problems and address those issues. Had one client that I was training, working with, she had 23 stores. And immediately when I popped in and showed her some KPIs, and I'll get to those, maybe I should jump in right now because I'm talking about it. When I started showing her the gross margin return on investment, and one of her stores popped up in the red, her quote to me was, "Oh my God, we've been meeting as a management group for a few weeks now, trying to figure out what's going wrong with that store." Immediately, when we popped her data in, we were able to drill right down to the ALUs, the individualized items that were causing that problem, and she was able to rectify that problem within a few weeks. And again, that's by looking at this gross margin return on investment column. And this is pretty powerful, this particular set of visualizations here, right? I'm looking at total sales, total inventory costs. I'm analyzing my last 365, my open POs, my average transactions. But when I get into this, right, if I look at this store zero and I'm going across, I've got days in period, period beginning, current on hand, average daily inventory, quantity sold, all these kind of statistics, and I'm moving left to right. I'm just dragging as we go. Let's pop this out. And you can see I've got my early warning system or my conditional formatting or managed by exception color set going on here. If I'm dragging, I've got stock to sales by cost, by quantity, sell-through percent, turn by cost, turn by quantity, days of inventory by cost and quantity. All of that stuff here. So if I drill down into this green store zero, you can see that not everything's so rosy under the cover, right? And what will happen with a lot of people as they're working with somebody that's trying to help them manage their inventory, what I've found over the years is they're going to manage that inventory, or somebody's going to tell them, mark this department down, mark this vendor down. And a lot of times it's not the entire department or the entire vendor that's giving you problems, but you got to be able to see it. And these tools that we'll be able to give you with Status Intelligence is going to give you that capability. It's phenomenal information to have at your fingertips wherever you are in the world. You can see I'm looking at store KPIs. I'm looking at company KPIs. As I go down, I've got vendor KPIs. All of this stuff is coming to you right out of the box. So you've got the ability to have this stuff at your fingertips wherever you are in the world, up-to-date data. There's no reports that you're running, all that kind of stuff. It's available to you in real time, updated as you want it, right? And that's the KPIs. Now, again, just to, there's a whole lot of data going on. There's a whole lot of stuff you're looking at. I always sometimes call it drinking from a fire hose when you first see this stuff. And again, you know, you can schedule a one-off if you need it. And you can see we've put in a dashboard that we think looks better on a mobile device, maybe a phone or an iPad. It's just telling you this is my company sales comparison, current year to last year. You can see this particular demo set. And again, this is demo data that we present. But you can see I could immediately say, I'm down 22% from last year. What do I need to do about that? And then you would go to some of your other visualizations, find the problems, deal with them, and bring that maybe back into the green. You know, that type of thing is available to you. As I move through, there's always somebody that I've talked to when I'm working with people that I really like the look and feel of my old version 8 reports, right? So we give them the old stuff here if they really want it out of the box. My you know, PO journals and sales journals and things like that. And, you know, so we've got that for you if that's how you desire to look at data. Now, whole lot of information again in a short amount of time. The KPIs that I built up here have a lot of information from left to right. I made a dashboard called Simple KPI, right? And the beauty of these things is I was working with a golf shop, and one of the guys told me, my sell-through doesn't really match the formula that you have. And I said, okay, what's your formula? And he gave it to me. We popped it in, and now he's looking at data the way that he's accustomed to looking at it. So all of these KPIs, and the reason why I made this simple one is just to, you know, make it a little easier to look at. I don't have to drag left to right. I just put all the statistics, you know, gross margin, return on investment, what am I getting in return for every dollar I spend? Those types of things just makes it a little bit easier to look at. Let me see. And all right, let me back out of this because you've seen the KPIs. I want to jump into sales, and then I'm going to jump back to analysts, which will lead Scott into his session. So when I go into sales, now I want to talk a little bit before I jump into any of these about the users, right? We have admin users that would administer the company, your company. You'd have your dashboards and they could build them and that kind of stuff. We have editor users who can do the editing. We have viewer users and they're priced accordingly, okay? And so what the viewer would have, like a lot of sales executives, maybe they don't want to be building dashboards and manipulating, making formulas and things like that. Maybe they just want to come in the morning and they want to take a quick look at, this is my sales executive dashboard. And any of these dashboards can be copied and replicated quickly. So maybe I have sales executive Jan, maybe the sales executive Bob, maybe buyer Sally, maybe buyer Paul. Paul deals with these vendors, so that's on his buyer dashboard. Sally deals with hers, so that's on her buyer dashboard. And you can see immediately by jumping into this, I'm filtering for this month, right? Now, if I come up here and I say, I want to see this year, I quickly do that, and you can see my numbers change before my eyes, right? Maybe I want to see what did I do for a custom date range. I put it in, and everybody looking at this is probably familiar with, you know, dynamic dates in Retail Pro. Maybe I want to see last year. You see, I did 12 million last year. This is always going to be a current year to last year, company total transaction count last year, company sales, average units, company average sales per transaction. And you can see I've got all kinds of different sales information that I can drill down into. I can drill down into IMS2. I can come over here and I can say, let's drill down to 2023 average yearly. So now I'm looking at by the month. And if I'm done drilling down, I can drill up. Any one of these I could pop out. I can copy. If I see one I like and I want to make just a couple tweaks, maybe I duplicate it and then I make those tweaks, save it. All of this stuff is so easy to do. I'm going to drill back up. on that one, and you can see all this kind of information that we have. I think I'm really running lean on my time here, so I'm kind of moving quickly. I've got sales order information here, and again, all of this stuff is right out of the box, right? Sales orders taken this year. Maybe I want to see last year. Apply. You can see I've got sales order deposits taken, sales order deposits used. I have $5,000 liability out there with sales orders that still need to be deposits that still need to be cashed in. Company open layaways, that kind of stuff. Incredible amount of information we have for you that you can look at. Store total deposits, SO journals, that kind of stuff. So suffice it to say, there's a whole lot of information, and it's incredible what you have that you can look at. So I'm going to move back one and jump into analysts. I'm going to go through this one rather quickly, and then I'm going to hand it over to Scott because I want to leave some time for him. And I also want to leave time for questions at the end. And you can see that I've got some different ways to look at data. Now, interestingly enough, let me pop this out and go into an edit mode and just show you the different ways you can actually look at data should you want, right? Incredible, right? We've built into this tool all of these kinds of different charts. We have people that use several of them. And again, we have several people that say, I just like to look at numbers. Okay, then you turn these into numbers up here or however you want to do it. We've got the ability to do pivots, pivot tables, grids, text views. It's really up to you how you want to look at your data. And again, it's just drag and drop wherever you are. Let me move through this one. Again, I can add visualizations within a matter of seconds. I've got invoice data, previous date, current date. I'm just going to kind of move through company year, transaction date, details, store sales last year to this year. I want to end on one that's going to lead into Scott and maybe Jim's follow-up presentation at the end. And this is an inventory analysis by department, this year's cash margin, all that kind of stuff that you need to know in order to manage your inventory and decide what's going on sale, what's not, that kind of thing. Incredible stuff we have here, and thankful that I got to present this to you. Hopefully you enjoyed the presentation. I'm going to move it over to Scott so that he has his time now. And if you have any questions, continue to drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them after Scott and Jim finish up. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bill. My name's Scott Leniger, so I am the Director of Development. Been doing this a very long time. So the struggles with reporting, I've been there. I've been making reports for probably my eternity of my Retail Pro career. So between myself and my team, we know the struggles that go on. On the development side, we take feedback, whether it's from our customers, other BP's customers, BP's themselves, to always tweak and advance the product. With this product, since it's SaaS based, we try to do as many updates as possible in a given year. That's a necessity essentially, whether if that's just tweaking bugs, new features, new functions, and/or new objects. The one object that we're currently working on is targets, because that's something that our customers want, and it's also really important for other customers themselves. But anytime that we do some sort of update, we do release that out. We give notice in advance to say, hey, there will be a period of downtime. But again, that's typically early in the morning, so where it's not affecting anybody, because we typically do that, between 2 4 a.m. So the downtime is minimum, so nobody would technically notice it. And again, that's maybe 4 times a year potentially, depending on how many updates we actually have to do to the web at that point. Some features that we have actually released this year in February is the emailing and scheduling of dashboards. So on a dashboard, so in this just example, the dashboard is the tile that we see on the screen here, just like what Bill was showing you with all the different tiles. Each one of those you can actually schedule and export out to your customers and send it via email. So on any dashboard, we have the way to now schedule it accordingly. So I can schedule this to be, one-time use, a daily, weekly, monthly, give it its date, time, and how I want it to export. whether it's PDF, Excel, or PowerPoint. It's all listed here, and I would save it, create the schedule, and then I'm essentially assigning my members of who's to receive that. And then again, that would be emailed out based on the format that it's set to. Been very helpful for our customers because there's certain things that they want to see by, end of every month or beginning of every month, kind of like inventory numbers, things of that nature. So they have that data. And or the people of like regional salespeople that just want to have it, locally on the machine because they might be traveling like on the airplane. So they have, the Excel sheets, their documents, so they can look at it, make decisions, and then, load the dashboards up when they need to. So this is actually a new feature that we've incorporated with our newest release, and that was, beginning of February that our customers are using, and this is live for all customers using the platform. So this is a cool feature, but other than that, there's other bugs, changes, and fixes that we've done and fixed and updated in the background to help everybody. Going from a live environment to an actual UAT environment, we are introducing targets. So this way it helps with your planning. Targets of, whether if I'm trying to do target numbers based on, departments, my vendors, if I want to do it by, average transactions, average units, many different facets. We're trying to incorporate all those or have at least a good base of everything. So this is at the moment in UAT. This is probably actually the first time it's ever been shown to the open public besides internal customers. So nothing's completely finalized yet because we're doing the UAT of making sure the data is correct, which is the hardest, heaviest point of everything, and then obviously making tweaks of UI along the way. But this would give you the ability for any customer to go ahead and create a target set to give it, based on your calendar type, whatever you're using, like Agorian, standard National Retail Federation objects of 445, 454s, your 544s or customs. You can create that, give it, assign it your fiscal years, how you're grouping it, your subsidiaries, and then how you want to break it down, whether it's by like day, month, quarter, week, yearly, and such, and then the different data types of what we're going to set and configure for those target sets. So there's a lot of things here. I'm not going to go in complete in depth, but we're trying to provide every facet option to help, give a target plan to see if you're actually meeting those target plans. And where that takes you to the next step is that before Status Intelligence, it was just presenting you data. This is letting you input in data. So if I actually go to a target set here, for instance, this is just department sales extended price for the company by month. I can go ahead and edit this. And then from here, I can drag and drop and set up my grid of however I want it to, the orientation. All of these cells and values I can edit and change. So these would be my target numbers. Mind you, this is just testing data. So we're just setting in values and different, orientations to make sure that whatever we set also is available in Status Intelligence to do comparisons. So as you see here, I'm filling out by each month of a calendar year for the calendar that I have created for all the different departments in this target sets to give it values. I'm ending, if this was by a whole year, $1.1 million worth. Where this takes us is when we have these values, we can actually then do real comparison. So going into the production, if I go into an actual target set, I can see how we're actually performing now. Now, mind you, this is still, UAT, this is still a demo set, but a couple of different options. These are the two target sets of the sales itself. So I have like my sales total numbers. So you can see here, I have what my target value was of the $1.1 million. I have the actuals. And again, the actuals is much higher than this because this is just UAT data. But I can see the different amounts and I can see my diff percentages of where I'm at. And ideally, if I expand this, I do have all of my departments and I can see how well I'm performing. Ideally, this would be a real case of like boys jeans. If it was for a year, I'm still only at a little over halfway percent of what I want to be as a target goal. If I was, say in October or something, I'm probably going to reach that. And obviously some of these you can see they're much higher because I'm already grossly above it because my initial target value is really low. So you can see where I'm actually hitting my margins or things I need to do and change. But these are just kind of two different orientations. The one is just more of a, stacked orientation where I have my a whole year with the departments, given your visualization. That's an option. And we have another option to where we're kind of breaking it up by the grid. Doing the same thing as how I was kind of doing the targets. I have it broken down by the company, the months, and then I'm listing all of my departments across so then I can see how each one's performing accordingly. And I have the same, the target values, the actual numbers. The actual numbers will be updated as you're getting new and new sales. So again, whether that's sales, receiving, inventory, you can see if you're meeting your numbers, obviously. And to Jim's point, what changes do I need to do to hit those target numbers? So this will be a big critical thing for most of our customers. using our platform now, but I think it's an additional piece of information that customers don't have today at that point, unless you're doing open to buy and have something using Dan Jablons, whoever else it might be. But again, with our product and tool, you can change this orientation accordingly for everything that you want. But again, here you can see I have sales, both two target sets I'm looking at for this year. I also have a couple receiving numbers to see how I'm doing on receiving. So we're vetting all this out at the moment. Again, it just takes time to make sure that everything is working accordingly and completing. So not too much here. We're trying to get this done as quickly as possible. One thing I do want to point out, because I was hoping to answer some questions in the chat here, we can export these. Any of these dashboards that you see, you can expand this and you can export these out directly. So if you go to Ellipses, you can go to the export options and you can export these out accordingly. So if you need to do this while in the UI, you can export it, or if you schedule it, you can export it and that'll be emailed to you. So we have both cases covered at that point in time. To answer just the other question that you had, Lisa, here, you can group and organize by anything for DCS, whether it's department, class, subclass, or by the whole DCS code itself. I'll also put that into chat. But if you have any questions, continue listing it. I'll answer those, and I'll give this back to Jim.
Okay, so let me share my screen again. This one. And you guys can now see it, I hope. All right. So thank you, Bill. Thank you, Scott. And yeah, so Scott just finished his piece. I will say that, and he showed you that inventory analysis. And as we continue to do webinars like this or talking to individual people, we have a couple of different, groups of people, I forget which one of them said it, maybe Bill, that, yeah, we've got somebody that, yeah, if you've got people on staff that know Excel and know what a pivot table is and, is good with data, they're going to pick this up very quickly. And they say, yeah, let's move forward with this. This is awesome. And then we have another group that will just be like, oh, wow, there is so much there. I just don't know if I have, the time, the skills, to do this. So as we had mentioned, this is a SaaS program, software as a service. So we're doing this for a few people now that we're doing, when they don't know how to get started, they can then, go to the next service level up. Obviously, there will be a fee associated with that. And we're working with our partners like Big Hairy Dog to start doing things like this. But just to give you an idea, and that was one of the ones that Bill, I think maybe Bill and Scott showed. So I won't go through it. But what we do, again, our focus is, Retail Pro reports, lots of massive amounts of data. BI, it's what can I do? What insight can you give me so I can take the appropriate action, right? So that's what our focus is. So what we did with this one customer, and sorry, I've got this little thing that's in the way. Let me move that. Okay. And just in terms of standard retail best practices, benchmarks for days or months of supply, so NRF will tell you that, yeah, you're healthy if your total stores in 3 to 4 months. You're slightly heavy if you're 4 to 6, overstocked if you're 6+. So for this customer, we said, yeah, across every item that you sell, you're at, just shy of 6. So you're kind of, maybe on the cusp of slightly heavy, but overstocked as a whole. So what do? We're going to focus on how do we increase sales, to free up cash without buying another item. So again, this is what we're going to focus on, where items or departments, vendors, whatever, that have high on-hand supply but slow turns, those that have high inventory cost values and reasonable margins, so we can promote it and so it's not going to hurt us. And then, we went through, and I'm not sure that I have time to go through each of these departments, but just I'll highlight a couple that, yeah, the men's department, yeah, so they're over $1 million. That they're almost at 6.5 months of supply, margin of around 40. So, but this was, excuse me, This is their largest inventory investment, and even a 10% increase in sell-through could free up roughly 100 grand in cash. So what are the areas to focus on? Here's a department, specific hats that, yeah, look at the supply, 8.3, but the margins are decent. So, but you're clearly overstocked. So what do we want to do? Look for seasonal promotions. How can we bundle? What can you do with visual merchandising? Put it in the front of the store, whatever. There's another one that tack that, holding inventory here hurts more because the margins are low, right? So again, some strategies on how to do that. Ladies, again, good margin, large inventory at cost. That's where you have strong opportunities to make some. Here's one, the kids, seasonally sensitive. So, hey, start doing it now. Don't wait till the end of the season and then have to do clearance types of sales. And here's the second hat category, and it's like, yeah, between the two of them, there's $300,000 in inventory. So again, even small improvements frees up significant cash. And then what departments? Yeah, look at these in bills. These would be green. So yeah, these are the ones with good margins. So yeah, promotions can still produce profits. Of the 7 of the categories that we looked at, again, we were looking at ones that combine high inventory and slow turns, and what are the things we can do. But from a pure cash flow standpoint, and people will say, well, Jim, this product costs money. How am I going to pay for it? It's like, okay, so yeah, when we looked at those 7 departments, the typical was 6 to 8 months of supply. If you can bring that down to 4 to 5 months, you'd free up roughly $400,000 to $600,000 without purchasing one new item, right? So this is where, as I said earlier, you have 2 retailers. The one that manages their inventory the most is the most profitable. This is why, right? And then just some simple sales strategies that we discuss with this customer. It's like, okay, we need to bundle slow and fast moving items. Gave some examples. Again, this moves inventory without heavy markdowns. Let's look at visually merchandising. Where are you going to place some of this stuff, et cetera? Sales incentives, putting spiffs on, these things, that areas where they have the most cash tied up. And then the biggest thing that we saw, just those 2 hat departments, that's the most imbalanced inventories that you've got. So just that would free up about 300,000 inventory. So that would be the fastest way to generate cash. Okay, so I know we're running down on time, and I think it was Lisa. Thank you for all of your questions, and I see the questions and answers going by. Are there any other questions that anybody has that we can answer in the little bit of time that we have left?
Try to answer them all as quickly as possible.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for so just maybe to kind of close up, Big Hairy Dog on your behalf has said, hey, can we do anything for people that did spend the time, the investment in their time? Can we do something? So yeah, we've talked about doing some, promotions of our own in terms of reduced fees or, things like that. Actually, the one other question that I get the most, and I just wanted to maybe show this, that if you look at, because a lot of times people are like, I don't really get it. How does this kind of integrate with my existing environment? And sorry, this is maybe a poor drawing, but it's, this is your central retail pro server. And then you have remote locations. It could be full stores. It could be warehouses. It could be pop-up locations, whatever. And then what do? We put this, an API, a program on your Retail Pro server that kind of sits there, and anytime we see any new data, we pull it out and we work with your IT people. We have a couple different ways to do that. I won't get into the technology part of that, but then all of that data is up here in the cloud. And now all of your users, whether it be laptop, desktop, or your phone, your tablets, whatever. Now, so this is where everybody can connect. So hopefully visually now after watching Bill's and Scott's that you maybe have a little bit better idea. And then the other kind of things that people have asked for when we do these things is, hey, can we do a one-on-one demo? The answer is absolutely yes. We've done some other unique promos to say people will say, hey, can I have a trial period without having to pay for the software? So we'll get as creative as we can so that everybody here is winning. So that's really the last thing that I have. I'll open it up one more time for any questions that anybody has. The silence is deafening. So
Sorry,
okay,
there was a question. Herbert asked, sorry, would we be able to store custom data within the program to use in the dashboards?
yes, yes, and the short answer, if you remember back to that KPI chart, we had talked about the concept of data blending where we can get some external. So we've had a couple people that they may have an open to buy system in a spreadsheet, or they may have their sales targets in a spreadsheet. And we've probably done more of that, and that's why, quite honestly, that's why we came up with that sales target that Scott showed you. So those would be, now in that case it's ours, so it would then be built in. But a lot of times what we would do with those, the targets in your spreadsheet, we would just put that into Retail Pro, because a lot of times people like, hey, it wasn't last week or a couple of weeks ago, first week in March. What happens? All right, I want to see, how did I finish this year? Year to date, month to date in February. I want to compare that to last year to date, month to date, February. And then I also, hey, I'm 4% above last year, but I'm 3% below where my target was for February, right? So, and again, on one visualization, that's what we're trying to do, is give you access to those multiple sets of data, not just Retail Pros, because this is what we just keep happening. Everybody will say, yeah, but you're killing my productivity, because now I got to run a whole bunch of Retail Pro reports, dump them to Excel, then look at my other Excel data that's non-Retail Pro, and then match that up and create charts and graphs. So yeah, you should be able to do that. Scott, did I miss anything there? You want to add anything to that answer?
No, I mean, again, we can have, detailed conversations of what you're trying to do and where that data exists, and as long as it's there, we can pull it.
Awesome. Thank you for the question. Any others before we give you back the rest of your day? Okay. Well, again, let me say thank you both to, Big Hairy Dog, Paula. Thank you. Thank you so much. Obviously, whatever feedback you get, obviously reach out. And to the retailers, again, thank you for your time. Hopefully, we've given you some things to think about, and reach out to Paula and whoever your contacts are at BHD, and they'll be able to help you.
Yep. Thanks, Jim and Bill and Scott. I appreciate your guys' time as well. And then I will share any feedback. We also recorded the demo, and we'll be sending a link out to everybody that joined today, and then anybody else that would like to take a look at it. And we'd love to schedule some additional follow-up, or if you want some one-on-one time to go into a little bit more details with Jim and his team, we'd love to get that scheduled for you as well. So any questions, just give me a call or shoot me over an email, and we'll get that information over to you. Thanks again, everybody.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.